Hello, my name is Makenna Piaskowski, and for my class Politics 312, Cyber War and Cyber Peace, I was tasked with creating a cyber strategy for the United States in order to guide agencies and promote a more efficient internet environment. First, I will begin by explaining the importance of developing a cyber strategy for the United States. Because the country has become so dependent and reliant on the internet and technology in our everyday lives, it is crucial that we develop a strategy to put in place to help regulate the internet and have a plan to deal with cyber issues. We use technology and the internet in almost every aspect of our lives. This includes critical infrastructure and even military operations. It is very evident that the internet is extremely important to many of the things that we do, so we must make its security a priority. Any plan of action or rules and regulations that are put in place must uphold civil liberties and human rights. This needs to be kept in mind when developing any new legislation, as the rights of individuals should not be infringed upon. In the following slides, I will explain the plan of action that I came up with in more detail. Additionally, 3 cyber threats that are most prevalent are highlighted, as well as how well we are meeting those threats and what more we can do to handle them. There are a few cyber diplomacy goals that the United States has. It is important to lay out these goals. The first goal is to create a cyber alliance, or a governing body that will make decisions about the internet and about key cyber issues. The next goal is to address obstacles to our cybersecurity and come up with ways to eliminate them. We also must recognize the major cyber threats to the United States, as well as discuss how we are meeting those threats and what more we can do to tackle them effectively and efficiently. The first cyber diplomacy goal is to create a cyber alliance. I feel as if it would be extremely beneficial for not only the United States but the entire world if a cyber alliance were to be created. This alliance would be open to all countries in the world, and it would be encouraged for every country that uses the internet to join. In 2016, Carr mentioned a group like this in her book, and explained that a global system of such significance should be governed by a multilateral and truly representative body. With a cyber alliance, all countries would have a say in how the internet is governed. The United States would be forced to relinquish control of the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, or ICANN. According to Carr 2016, power is what has been motivating the United States to hold control over ICANN. Forcing the U.S. to give up their control will eliminate one country from being responsible for the internet and making decisions in order to retain power. This alliance would also discuss key issues pertaining to the internet and come up with laws and regulations for countries to follow. The Cyber Alliance would agree on key definitions like cyber attacks, cyber war, cyber terrorism, and critical infrastructure. In 2014, Singer and Friedman suggested that if these terms were defined, it may make it easier to understand and prevent the issues. Terms for declaring cyber war and cyber neutrality would also be discussed. In 2009, Corns and Kastenberg discussed the cyber incident between Russia and Georgia. Learning from this case, we would need to discuss the implications of taking refuge in another country during a cyber incident. By laying out terms for declaring cyber war and neutrality, issues similar to this one could possibly be avoided. The attribution issue is something that also needs to be discussed and can be talked about by the Cyber Alliance. Determining a plan of action for when states do not know where attacks are originating from is important. Attribution has proven to be increasingly difficult in cyberspace because there are no geographical limits, according to Singer and Friedman in 2014. If a state cannot determine where the attack originated from, they have no one to attribute the attack to. Therefore, it is impossible to hold anyone accountable or penalize anyone. Normally, in physical war, it is obvious who the opponent is. Thus, they can be held accountable for their actions and be punished accordingly or even retaliated against. People can be held responsible for crimes and have charges made against them, but this is difficult to do in cyberspace. According to Singer and Friedman, another issue arises because people can launch attacks remotely or route attacks through a number of servers around the world, making them seem as if they are originating from somewhere else. This was seen in the Estonia cyber incident. It was found that 25% of the attacking computers were based in the United States. However, according to Otis 2018, the attack actually originated in Russia. Even if we do figure out where attacks are coming from, we may not be able to do much if the person or group is in another country that has different rules or laws. With a cyber alliance, countries would be able to agree on rules and standards so that the appropriate course of action can be taken when cyber attacks are launched. There are 3 key cyber threats facing the United States that need to be addressed. The first is Advanced Persistent Threats, or APTs. The second being malware in the form of cyber weapons, and the third being attacks to our critical infrastructure. These will be explained in detail in the following slides. The first key cyber threat to be discussed is Advanced Persistent Threats. APTs are attacks that focus on a specific target. APTs involve large amounts of research on the target, allowing the attacks to be specialized and sophisticated. Because these attacks are so thorough and planned out, it is difficult to know that an attack is even taking place. Advanced persistent threats can have a very high level of sophistication to them, and it can be a serious threat to U.S. interests. APTs can be designed to leave back doors open for attackers to regain access to systems, alter file information, and include malware that can affect systems. According to CISA in 2020, a Russian-originated APT was found to have compromised United States critical infrastructure entities and private sector organizations. Access vectors for these attacks included the SolarWinds Orion platform and Azure Microsoft 365 application services. According to CISA 2020, attackers were found to have gained access by password guessing, password spraying, and obtaining secured administrative credentials through a remote access service. The attackers were also able to compromise the supply chain of the SolarWinds Orion products. This incident shows the sophisticated reality of advanced persistent threats and their ability to impact government organizations and critical infrastructure. The second major threat is malware in the form of cyber weapons. We especially need to be prepared for cyber weapons that cause physical harm in the real world. We have seen a predecessor of these attacks with Stuxnet, which did physical damage but did not harm any people. Stuxnet was a complex worm that was generated to attack a specific target, the Natanz nuclear facility of Iran's nuclear weapons program. According to Singer and Friedman, 2012, this worm caused fluctuations in the pressure and speed of centrifuges being used by the program, ultimately causing one to even explode. Even though this attack did not harm anyone physically, with rapid technological advancements, it is not unlikely that a much worse attack of this nature will be carried out. Seeing an attack like this opened many people's eyes to the possibility of a much worse cyber weapon that can harm a large number of people. The last major threat to be discussed are attacks on critical infrastructure. Attacks to our country's infrastructure can come in the form of malware, ransomware, distributed denial of service attacks, etc., and can be detrimental to our economy and safety as a country. Power grids can be shut down, water supplies can be contaminated, and pipelines can be shut down, along with countless other incidents that may occur. According to Weinberg, in the case of the Colonial Pipeline in 2021, operations were shut down for almost 2 weeks as a result of a ransomware attack. This caused gas prices to skyrocket and left many gas stations without fuel. Over 100 gigabytes of data was stolen from company servers prior to the attack, and only relinquished the data after Colonial had paid $5 million in cryptocurrency. Weinberg 2021 also stated that the origin of the attack is still unclear, although there was talk about its origin coming from a phishing attack that targeted an employee. As we have seen, a sophisticated attack on our critical infrastructure can cause widespread damage and chaos. We depend on this infrastructure in our everyday lives, so we must take measures to protect it at all costs. After identifying the 3 key issues, it is important to discuss how well we are meeting them. As many of these threats are new, we do not have much data on them or have adequate resources in place to defend against them efficiently. This places us at somewhat of a disadvantage. According to Singer and Friedman in 2012, our defensive must work to be more focused than our offensive. The people launching these attacks only need to get through security measures one time, while we must work to stop these attacks every single time. We need to be constantly aiming to protect our systems from various types of attacks and stay one step ahead of the attackers. One case where we experienced a disadvantage is with the Stuxnet worm. It was the first attack that we have seen of its kind, and there have not been similar attacks after it. Therefore, we are not really experienced in that area. Singer and Friedman have noted that we need to make learning more about these types of attacks a priority, because a similar incident can happen that is much more serious. Another reason that we are at somewhat of a disadvantage is because we have a lack of information sharing and consistency within government agencies. Even though we have agencies that are designed to focus on cyber issues, they sometimes fail to work cohesively. This can cause key information to be overlooked, which could have possibly helped stop an attack. Lastly, an issue highlighted by Singer and Friedman is that our country is lacking cybersecurity professionals to fill needed positions. This presents a large issue because we cannot mitigate these issues if there is no one to do so. We are lacking manpower and resources to effectively defend against cyber threats. What more can we do to protect ourselves against these cyber threats? We must make it a priority to increase our cyber capabilities as we become more reliant on technology. There are a number of actions that we can take to increase our cybersecurity. Filling job openings must be treated as a priority so that we can defend our country to the best of our ability. Recruiting individuals out of college or the military with related degrees or job experiences is essential and may help fill some positions, as suggested by Singer and Friedman. Additionally, employee training is important to get people educated on security best practices to help decrease vulnerabilities. Singer and Friedman suggested the idea of creating a cyber CDC. A cyber CDC is a viable option to help get people educated and informed. The concept is much like the CDC, or Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, as it would put out information and security guidelines to be followed, much like guidelines and precautions that are put out by the CDC for sicknesses like the common cold or even COVID-19. This would give the country a central source of information and best practices about cybersecurity so that everyone can be kept in the loop. It is also extremely important to develop a detailed plan if a cyber incident occurs. Business continuity plans are crucial to put in place, especially for the private sector that controls our critical infrastructure. Singer and Friedman mention that if a disaster occurs, we must be ready to handle the situation and have a plan in place that will maintain our safety and security as a country. Another thing that we can do is implement multi-layer security measures to provide redundancy in case of system failure or attacks. Taking this defense in-depth approach allows for extra protection if one or more security layers get bypassed by attackers. Lastly, it would be beneficial if there was a thorough incident reporting system in place. Individuals should be informed about who to go to if they notice anything suspicious, which then would be investigated. If incidents are reported quickly, we can begin to handle the situation immediately and provide the most effective response and solution. It is important to discuss the topic of laws and regulations pertaining to cybersecurity. The question lingers on whether or not existing laws should be changed to include cyber attacks and cyber threats. While this can be done, I think that it is important for laws to be created that deal specifically with cyber attacks. According to the National Conference of State Legislatures in 2022, in 2021 alone, over 250 cybersecurity bills and resolutions were introduced by United States lawmakers. Additionally, at least 35 states enacted legislation dealing with cybersecurity that year. It is evident that more laws and bills will be proposed and created as the country becomes more technologically driven. It is essential that we have legislation that pertains to cybersecurity as soon as possible in order to thwart off attacks and get our security under control. In conclusion, the United States must place cybersecurity as a top priority. There are a few steps that need to be taken to do so. This includes creating a cyber alliance to discuss major cyber threats, acknowledging the key threats to our own country, and increasing our cyber capabilities. This is essential to our country as a whole as we become more dependent on technology and the internet in our daily lives. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my proposal.